Hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar for the Steeplechase with England Athletics. Tonight we're joined by Luke Gunn for a Steeplechase water jump special, which has been very much looked forward to by everybody who's been attending the webinars so far. So I'm going to hand you over to Luke. He's going to do a presentation and I'll probably pop back in for the question and answer at the end. I'll be here in the background if anybody has any technical issues, if you type in the chat box. Also, if you have any questions for the end of the session, if you highlight your questions using the grey question mark icon, I'll be able to put them on the screen. We will be finishing tonight at about 5:45 to enable everybody to get over to the Mark Rowland's webinar, which starts at 6 o'clock. So it'll be finishing about 1:45. Okay, so welcome Luke, and I'll speak to you in a bit.
Hello everybody. What a chance to be the warm-up for Mr. Mark Rowland. Brilliant, and I'm very keen and excited to go onto that webinar afterwards. If you don't know what we're talking about, there's another webinar at 6 you need to register for with Mark Rowland, British Steeplechase record holder, Olympic bronze medalist. I have the duty of talking through the water jump with everybody. Done a number of workshops, and I recognise so many names on that list, and many experienced coaches and many coaches that have come along to workshops we've put on, doing drills and skills and sessions. But often water jump is the one that people want to know most about. It can often cause the most issues for athletes the first time when they're doing it. And it's actually really good for me to finally sit down and make a presentation on it. Those that don't know me, I was a steeplechaser for many years, went to 3 Commonwealth Games, won British titles, but I'm now a coach. I coach a few steeplechasers, not as many as I'd like, but actually 800 to marathon and everything in between. Mainly based out of the University of Birmingham, where I'm head of athletics there. Let's jump into it. First, one more thing. So if you have any questions, don't wait till the end. Just keep chucking them in there. It'd be really good to, if I spot one, I'll even just jump on it straight away. But yeah, chuck questions in as and when you remember them. Okay. First and foremost, I think most of us agree it's a blooming hard event, the steeplechase. These are just some buzzwords that I think we all agree that you have to be a successful steeplechaser, even at a junior level, but definitely a senior level. So although I'm going to talk about the water jump in extent, we have to acknowledge that there's a lot more going on than just that. But the water jump, it was always my favourite bit as the athlete. I think as a kid I was a bit of a show-off. When I worked out I could do it. But yeah, this is the main thing. The research, suggests that this is an area that if you're inefficient technically, it can cost you the most in the race. And I'm sorry to say, for you girls out there, or coaches to girls, there's been quite a few now papers prove that this can, if you're neglecting in technique, it can have a bigger effect on girls than it can on guys, for a bit that we'll go on to in a second. But it can cost a lot, especially if somebody goes down in front of you. But we're going to talk through the techniques now. Rather than looking at my face, I've put Emma Coburn up here. Brilliant graphic here showing the technique in one simple action. I'm going to break the phases down for my own coaching. These are the phases I use into 4 phases. The approach, what you do on the barrier, the flight phase, and then the exit. As Emma shows here, she's a proficient world champion, Olympic medalist. Makes it look easy, and I think that's the main point where we're looking for. When we know how to do this well, it does look kind of effortless. Okay. I've just got a couple of videos I'm just going to show in action, just because we're going to talk about them in a second, and give me a chance to catch my breath. So it's a bit grainy, but this is Zach Seddon, our current British champion, and myself at Solihull BMC a few years ago over 2K. It's actually the second to last water jump, so we're a bit tired. But as you can see, both, and Zach's actually nailed the water jump better than I have here. But that kind of action, it's simple, step on, step off. However, not quite as simple to teach when we do it. Okay, this next one I'm just going to quickly show because this is really relevant, and I'm sure a few of you on here is what we're trying to ask. This is when it doesn't go right. Okay, and I'm just going to pause it there. Firstly, poor old Nicole, she has given me permission for this, and she was a latecomer to the event, and she's happy to do. But this is what we often see as a problem: 2-foot landing, complete stop dead, and that's what I'm going to try and talk through how we solve that. Okay, hopefully that's on. Right, first phase, the approach. This is not me dismissing how important it is. It is actually, the most important thing. But the cues are the simplest. You have to sight the barrier and then attack with some speed into the barrier. Okay. I've done Nicola's service here, and she is our first one up, who's doing a good thing. And then the other athlete in the bottom corner is Dougie Musson, a male athlete I coach. As you can see here, Nicole on the left is sighting that barrier really early. You can see her heads up, looking at the barrier a fair way off, and is actually coming in with some decent speed. Dougie actually has misjudged it. He's gone a bit too close. He's coming a bit too aggressive, and he's putting the brakes on, and he's already got that center of mass behind him, trying to get up onto the barrier and over. Okay, we're trying to look for sighting it early and then some good aggression in the last 3 steps, in particular into the barrier. Now, as I say, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because actually the technique, I am, but I'm going to jump into the technique first and foremost. So what we saw with Nicole when she 2-foot landed is an often thing that you see, and I'm sure some of you coaches have even quizzed athletes on what they're thinking about before that water jump. And I think lots of them are scared of it. I think that's fair to say, a fear of the water jump, especially compounded if you've had a bad experience. But it's not too complicated. The speed in, the approach, plus or minus your technique gives you your speed out. It is that simple an equation. That is why it's really important to cue approach. But actually, as you can see beneath there, the factors that affect that speed going in, other than us just shouting run faster at it, there's obviously a lot more going on. Confidence is often one that's said, I'm just not very confident about what I'm doing, I'm thinking about too much, fine. The uncertainty of landing, okay, they're not quite sure what's going to happen on the other side, they've probably had a bad experience beforehand. They're both byproducts of experience, good and bad. There's not much we can do about that apart from enhance our practice of experience to give them more positive experiences. They're a byproduct. The fear that the foot will slip on the barrier, which is often what it sometimes knocks down to for an athlete, that is the main area I believe we can affect on this approach and on the next phase, which I'll go through in a second. On the barrier. So I'm a big advocate of aiming the foot to hit the front top apex of the hurdle. Okay, that means that the heel shoots for the front facing aspect of the barrier. I'll go through in a second, with the toes up, ready in a bent leg position, just like Dougie is showing on the left. Okay, if you look at the diagrams towards the right of there, the black box demonstrates the steeplechase barrier from side on, and then that foot is the aim of where the foot should be shooting for. The top shows that toes up, heel shooting for it. The other 2 pictures show the slight other variations that we go through. Dougie on the left, good position. As you can see from that angle of the red line, he has got his toes up and his heel is aiming for the barrier. He is going to get on that barrier very well. Nicole, sorry to pick on her again, as I say, she was more than happy to do this, has done what I see a lot of athletes do. She's tried to fish for the top of the barrier with her spikes, believing that her spikes should be what she's aiming for the wood to stick in for. Really common, and actually sometimes even taught. The next diagram, so the green tick, the top one, shows that if you aim that, the middle of the foot to hit the apex or towards the back of the heel, and then on that top right diagram, it shows the green circle where that impact happens. It's a much surer way and a much easier way to adjust in the air for the athlete if that is where they're aiming for. The next diagram in the middle shows somebody fishing with their spikes with a slightly downturned foot. And there are two risks of that. The middle one shows us a risk that the foot could miss completely. You're aiming at a very small piece of area with some very, 6mm spikes, probably with fatigue. There's a risk that you could go over it altogether. Now, if you've got some pretty good speed coming in, that might not be the end of the world. But as the bottom diagram shows, if you misjudge it the other way, your toe's going to get caught, and then there's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter how fast you're going. So I always advocate for the foot on the top apex, okay? Plus, you need to crouch towards the barrier. I'll go through that in a second. So here is Emma Coburn up again, demonstrating what I've just been articulating again. So for those out there that have to give some faith, this shows the width of the water jump barrier, and unless Emma has size 14 feet, which I'm pretty sure she doesn't, it shows that if you contact with the heel, as in that second picture from your left, the foot will roll over, and then the spikes, this is a really important bit, will not be on top of the barrier, but they'll actually be on the other side of the barrier for you to be in a position to push off, which is what I'll go through in a second. Yeah, really important. Aim with the heel, roll over. This next picture, which is taken from US Olympic trials, some very, very good runners in here, are demonstrating this perfectly in unison. First, look at the feet circled in the blue circles. Both Ben and Don have their feet on the other side of the barrier. The spikes are engaged and they're in a powerful position to push off. If you look at the green arrows, that shows all people hunching towards the water jump, okay? They're crouching down, they're not sitting up tall. They're basically curling up like a spring, ready for the next point, okay? Their heads try to stay quite low, and they come to meet the barrier. They don't jump onto it or try and be tall. This is the really difficult bit for steeplechasers to teach. There is then a slight pause whilst your center of mass goes over the barrier, so that you're like Don, who is in the orange spikes, and Ben in the red spikes. Their center of mass is now past the barrier, and they're in a position to push. So there's a timing element to be had to get yourself into the right position before the next phase. So foot on top of the apex, crouch, roll over. That is the work on the barrier. Now, there's a bit of research out there, and I think this is more than valid just from my own anecdotal experience, that the crouching height might not be as relevant for females, especially our tall females that we have. Obviously, the barrier is a little bit lower, and they might not have to crouch down as much. If you watch Emma Coburn, she doesn't do too much because she's very explosive, and she just taps on the top. The video Zach said, and as well, he's not much of a croucher, but he's got springs in his heels to propel him forward. So there are slight variances in this, but the evidence kind of suggests that there might be a little gender variance. Again, it's completely athlete dependent. What this also illustrates here is that the landing distance is really important. How far you get into that water jump. There's obviously beyond a critical mass, you don't want to try and do a long jump off it, but obviously if you're getting put in that in the deep end, it's difficult to dig your way out. So we're looking all of this with this technique to try and propel us as far as sensible through the water jump. The next bit, the flight. Now, if you've got your center of mass in the right position, this bit can be relatively easy, okay? If not, it's a big effort, especially on tired legs, to try and do this bit. The top left picture is probably the best ever flight phase I've seen off a water jump barrier. I don't know the athlete in mind. And then poor Nicole is going to be our poor guinea pig of a bad example in a second as well. What you want to do is, if you've rolled over the barrier and got your center mass in the right position, is push the barrier behind you. Yeah, the foot should be pushing out. That should then, as you can see in the top left picture here, the leftmost circle, blue circle, is showing her foot position, taking off the barrier. The next one along around her knee and hip shows that her knee is getting out to almost full extension. And also, importantly, her hip is getting out to full extension. This is almost a perfect triple extension demonstration. In the last circle with her other knee, she is showing this drive the free knee forward with exemplary technique. You can also see her propulsion is going forward and slightly up. Really nice. She's going to get good distance on that jump. Poor Nicole here, as you can see, has not pushed off the barrier at all. They've been completely inactive foot and is already heading down towards the water. Okay, her angle of trajectory is almost 45 degrees down. She's not going to go very far. Next along, Jermaine, who's great in the air. You can see here the benefit of that separation. He would have coiled up into that crouch position on the barrier and has now exploded into an expansion. And his leg span is double what Nicole's is at pretty similar points on that flight. He's going to get a bit further into the pit. So real simple. Push the barrier behind, drive that free knee forward and expand. And then you fly. Now, I have an issue with the word landing on this. So landing in most of the sports, gymnastics, or even in athletics, in high jump or long jump, it is the end of the action. And I think sometimes when we teach this drill, or when people think of the steeplechase or the water jump, they see it as a discontinuous skill, with the landing being the end of the drill. Unfortunately, we don't get marks for style like they do in gymnastics, or, as the picture on the right demonstrates, or in diving, when they're not judged on what happens underneath the water, only in it. Poor old Rowena Bell, given that everyone's worst nightmare happened here. So I always use the word exit. Okay, we're looking to leave the pit as quickly as possible. The action doesn't finish there. In fact, we go into a lung busting, another lap with 4 hurdles and another water jump coming up quickly. So we need to prepare in the air. So dorsiflexing the landing foot is a strong position to be in before you hit the floor. But the other leg, so the leg that has just pushed off the barrier, needs to come through bent into a position to take a big step out. Okay, and then we need to drive out. Now, apologies, it's a bit of a busy slide, but if we start with Dougie on the left, with the blue circle, you can see his toes are up. He's primed and ready for the ground. An experienced steeplechaser, been doing it for 10 years or so. He knows what he's doing. The next picture along, I've let Nicole off on this one, but this is another girl I've been working with, an absolute novice, so completely understandable. From that blue circle, you can see she is pointing her toes. Leg is already nearly at full extension. She's got nowhere to go. She's going to have to rely on having very strong ankles or probably a very sore Achilles after doing this drill. But the other important bit is the green circle on Laura. So this is the one with the X on it in the middle picture. You can see she's about to hit the ground and her knee is still behind her. Her foot is still behind her. Moving along to the next picture, if you look at the first green circle, very similar position to nearly hitting the water, and that knee is already through. So you need to be quick and get that knee through. And as the next green circle, which is Gravdal, who's a very experienced steeplechaser, proves, although she's gone quite deep, her legs are in a split position and quite a powerful stance to then drive forward and out. Okay. I know for many of you, that's probably teaching you to suck eggs, but they're my cues that I really go through to make sure that I keep it as simple as possible for the athlete. Now, putting all that together in one is a bit more difficult. Not going to share that just yet. I'm going to go back to my videos and again, start quizzing questions if you want to. I'm going to start working through some working examples, and Nicole's going to make a starring role again because I had the the fortunate position to teach her water jump when she was really struggling. So it was really, good videos to show some progress. Okay. Just loading up for a second. So as you can see there, big splash, split position, chest down. She's not going to be exiting the water jump very quickly at all. I'm going to show it from a different angle in a minute. It is coming through, guys. It's just a bit of a pause. There we go. So slowing it down a little bit, this is another view. So she's coming in quite aggressive, but as you can see there, toes on the barrier. So we need to sort that out first. She then lands 2 feet together, arms spread, very deep, yeah, and basically walks out of the pit. So what we were doing was we cued the foot action. That's what we were doing first. So on this one, she's already improved a little bit. It might still be flat, but it's a little bit better. And she's already got the legs a little bit further apart in the air. She's not driven off the barrier at all, though. So she's still going to get pretty wet. And I think this is probably the first important bit to say, is that you can only change one thing at a time, and it's going to take time. And you can't do 80 water jumps in a session to try and fix it. And it's going to take them time to go away and do things. So this is not Nicole, but this is a good example of how I might simplify this down, or maybe how to do a drill without having to do the full action of the water jump. It's grueling on the body. You need good weather. You need the track to abide by it. But that doesn't mean that you can't work on some of those cues that we said before. So Laura here, complete novice. So we're going to go through a bit of what we did with her. The first one, basically she's been far too passive. So the approach is important. Not quite this slow, it's in slow-mo. But she actually has good foot on, but then if you see here, she's reaching down to the ground already, and her center of mass is going forward. Her legs left behind. It's never going to get through in time. If that was water, she would have double footed landing for sure. So we tried to address that to start with, and we tried to get her a bit more aggressive, but then start to drive that free knee off the barrier. Yeah, so it wasn't getting left behind. Not quite as bad behind, it's starting to believe, and you can see her center of mass is a bit more in the middle, but she's still reaching with that foot. Not quite there yet. So we then cued, this is all in one session, for her to reach out with that foot a bit more. Yeah. Just coming through. You can see she definitely reached further, but then that leg got left behind again, and the center of mass is behind, and it's a real trade-off. And especially athletes that want to see immediate results. I'm a big advocate that the athlete has to try this action and do it repeatedly. Sorry, one sec. That they have to do these actions to start getting that feel. As you say, when you change your cue, it throws your center of mass off a lot, and you need to then adjust again. Now, I think I completely agree with this, that you shouldn't be water jumping all year round, but doing a simple box jump like that, or even just getting a step or a low wall to step off, you don't even have to do the run into it, to start to teach those positions and those cues all winter round in a safe way, is a nice way to start getting them feeling more comfortable with where their body should be in space. Yeah. I think it's only fair that we should show Nicole now. So she's had a year's worth of work in, and I say she's based over in the States. We don't see her much, but I contacted her to ask for her permission to do the video, and she kindly sent in her update. So let's see how she's been getting on. Probably the greyest the skies have looked in Albuquerque for a while, but look. I'm going to slow it down for you now. So good aggression. What I love about this, her foot placement, way better. And I'm going to pause it there. She's actually pushing off the barrier. Her legs have got some space in between in the air. Remember that picture comparing her to Jermaine Coleman before? And look at that. She's not quite out of the water jump with that second step, but she's pretty close. and she's going to then drive out and an infinitely better water jump. And it must be, and it should be said, that Nicole finished, I think, 4th or 5th at the British Champs, double foot landing every single water jump. So we, it's exciting to see somebody like that. She's gone away and she's worked on it. She hasn't done water jumps all year round. She's waiting until the weather's good, but she has been working on some of those cues as and when they've come through. But it also demonstrates the time it takes. That's a year later, and still tons of work to be done on that. That's only the one video I've seen, but huge progress. And I'm sure some of you have had, athletes that have, seen it as an impossible task to really teach that, but it is absolutely possible with a bit of perseverance. Cool. Right, I can see lots of questions coming in already. I'm happy to take some and pause for the rest if everyone else is. So between 2,000 and 3,000 in the race, speed is far from the forefront. You're trying to simply survive or respond to those. During sessions, what are ways that you stimulate that fatigue and headspace? Working on the approach and barriers as if they are there. So great question, Tony. There's multiple ways to answer that. So first and foremost, if you're teaching a new skill, you should always do it fresh. And something like that, if somebody's having problems with a water jump, I would always prefer to do it, away from sessions or away from fatigue first, so that they get the cue points right, then start bringing in those resilient training. In terms of how to, prepare for those sessions, I'm a big advocate of doing sessions over barriers. I don't, unless somebody is really having problems, do water jumps in sessions, just because it's so grueling on the body. But I have done it in the past over small reps. But I would probably say that they would get more benefit from, doing some longer reps over hurdles, getting the legs used to what that horrible feeling feels like in that last K of a steeplechase. There are a number of ways of doing that. You could do, 5, 6, 7 worth of K over barriers off, something like a 5K session. Or you could do, front load the session, not over barriers, 3 or 4Ks worth of work on the flat, get yourself fatigued, and then cue hurdling when you're fatigued and tired. I'm also a big advocate of running in groups whenever you can for hurdling, that you don't get your own lane in a steeplechase. So if you're lucky enough to have athletes around that you can train together, brilliant. If you don't and you're willing to travel a little bit, I would. I just think it's a skill set that you're going to have. The earlier you can learn it, the better. In terms of headspace, experience is one thing, and sometimes that can be a hugely negative experience for some. So yeah, I think it's working with the athlete, setting out a reasonable expectations in those first few chases, and also agreeing on a pace. It's far too easy to set off too quickly in a steeplechase, especially in the girls. 80-second lapping gives you 10 minutes, and most girls can easily start off low 70s, and then it does become a bit of a death march going in. Pacing is even more important in steeplechase than it is on flat races. So yeah, great question, loads of answers, and I'm happy to speed that through more with you in proper examples. Mike, I wouldn't. So yeah, the question is, if you've got good approach, speed, and technique, would you look at hurdling the barrier? From experience, I have done it. I learned how to do it just to try it out rather than dismiss it straight away. I've done it in a race 3 times. Once was into the first water jump, absolute cluster. There's about 20 of us all trying to compete for the same space, and I just put a burst in and hurdled it to get clear. And I've also done it in a very slow tactical race on the last water jump because I was at such speed. The important thing is the speed you need to go. As I said, I think there's been some studies out there that suggested that to make it economical for guys, you probably need to be running more like 64, 63 seconds to actually have enough momentum behind you to get deep, far enough into the pit and not get left in the water. Then, not many of our guys are running 8-minute pace just yet, but you might be at the end of a slow and tactical race. For the girls, a bit different. It's a bit lower, but as fatigue comes in, in my opinion, it's much more replicable action to put the foot on and get some propulsion and go further on. Even the Kenyans are, the leading Kenyans are starting to consistently put their feet on it now. I think they're seeing a bit more of a shift in that. But it's worth trying. I have taught guys how to do it, but personally, I think it's much more cost effective in energy to put your foot on. Cool. No more questions. Anyone else keen to get in? Jay, you've read my mind. Yes, on the next slide in seconds, a few of the sources I've used here and a few more journals. But actually, it was amazing how much came up when you just put Steeplechase journals in and came through. But like with all of them, read thoroughly. Some are making some quite sweeping statements and then contradicted by one or two, three others afterwards. But yes, I'll put the link up in a second, and if there's no more questions. The difference between the water jump and the others, so I'm assuming the other hurdles technically. Do you know what? Not a lot. The approach is very similar. You need to attack it. You need to, show the hurdle your sole of your foot, in my opinion. But obviously with the hurdle, you just push over the top, and with the water jump, you're looking to make contact with it. Most of the same positions are relevant. So you're looking to curl the chest down towards the hurdle, stay low, keep a low parabola over the hurdle. But yeah, I guess it's more just those people that have a bit of an issue with the water jump. I've got loads that are really good proficient hurdlers, and then they just overthink the water jump. So it is quite different. The only other thing I'd say, and it does happen on hurdles too, is if you're working on an outside water jump, the momentum of the bend actually throws you right and away from the track. This also happens on the bend if you're hurdling with your right leg, your lead leg, sorry. It throws you right. So there's a few different variances that you need to do. If you're doing a water jump on an outside water jump, it's preferable to get your right foot on the barrier so that you can propel yourself back left. Yeah, good point, Richard. So yeah, why are there hurdles at the end of the straight? Basically, coming back to that landing issue. So when people are starting to learn a new skill, they repeatedly just stop when they come out of the water jump, and even in the indoor centre, they're trying to think so much about where their foot position is, they forget to run out. So I do it with water jumps as well outside. I often put a hurdle or two even, like 10 meters outside of the water jump, just to cue them to remember to drive over it. You can also do that in pairs and have a bit of a race to the first hurdle. It's not who touches down in the water first, it's the person that gets over that first hurdle. So it's just another visual cue for them to remember to work out. For the new under 15 looking steeplechase, what water jump training would you start with? Good question. I would always start with getting proficient or showing some decent control. Stepping down off a box or a wall and getting people used to landing on one leg and driving out. So as I said, that could be shin height to start with, just stepping off and and then walking out just to get used to that position, and then increasing that height gradually and checking all those cues I said before, that the toes are up, the center of mass is in the right position, and then gradually get them running out. If you can get them doing that first confidently, then I would start working on how they put their foot onto the barrier. As I said before, the most important bit is that they feel confident that their spikes aren't going to move on the barrier. So I often just put a barrier up, either a water jump or a normal one, get them to put their spikes on, and get them just to march at it off one step and put their foot on the barrier, step away. They don't actually ever get off the ground, but they're just doing a march where they go at the barrier, put their foot on, and step back. Foot on, step back. You can do that into a wall as well, but you're just trying to teach that action. Then gradually start bringing in grass runs. I'm not a big fan of doing water jumps into sand pits. They create divots, and if you don't break them regularly, they can, cause some issues, but also it's really hard to run out of sand, and it starts teaching those bad habits. So I would do it onto grass, preferably first. If you can't have grass, it's not feasible, then sand's fine, and then start teaching them into the water jump. We're really lucky at the university I coach at, but you can actually take the water jump barrier off and fill up the pit. And I've done that as well. It's almost like a big puddle, just to get them used to landing in water without having the complexity of having to go over the barrier as well. Hope that helped. Which type of shoes would you recommend, especially? There's a number of steeplechase spikes out there. I don't think they need to be that. The only thing I'd say is when you're looking at your spikes, I would avoid any excessive plastic on the sole plate. So rubber's probably better. That's probably the only risk you can have. There's not many that have it anymore, but yeah, I'll just be having a look at the sole of the spike you're looking at, and making sure that it's not got plastic on it, because that's just a bit risky. Anything else is fine. Good point, Stephen. Yeah, I should have said that. I'm a big advocate. No one has a favourite leg. With mine, they're not allowed to say that. Yeah, you've got to learn how to do it off both. Say in a group going over a water jump, there's a chance you have to adjust at the last minute. So you've got to be competent on both. And that's where I'd say those other, simpling down of the action, doing it off a box, onto grass, don't do a run at it first, just do the step down, teach them how to do it on their lesser favourite leg, so that, break it down as simple as possible, so that they feel more confident and competent on it. I can see you're talking about spikes down there, guys. I like that. So yeah, Bash is saying, yeah, there's most cross country spikes have rubber on there. Yeah, absolutely. I'd just say have a look. Most are pretty competent. Thanks for that, Jay, as well. Yeah, the Mambas are pretty good. Yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah, some of the new Nike spikes have gone so lightweight that you can burst out the side of them. So yeah, you maybe just want to make sure that they've got some integral support around them, just to save you money, if anything. Cool. I'm going to quickly just switch back to my presentation, but please feel free to ask me more questions if you've got them. I'm just going to show you here. I can see Bash is on the call, and I'm going to make a plug here. I thank him for this share here, and I'll happily send this around, or Bash can himself. He's come up with some real detailed yet simple explanations of the water jump and hurdling in itself. I found these really useful just to hand out around my group and articulate some of what I've done there. Which again will be in this I can attach them as a document. Really useful stuff. So yeah, thanks for that, Bash and Laura from Northern Ireland. And also, yeah, so I forgot to put this in. Hopefully you can address these technical points and work through these cues. You shouldn't be afraid of the event, or definitely your competitors, especially if they're wagging a finger at you in the Commonwealth Games. But yeah, I'm not signing off. I'm just clicking over to the last page, which has a few of those links that Jay asked for. If this is the first webinar you've come to, I have skipped over a lot of fundamentals because I believe Trevor Painter has done them brilliantly on previous webinars, and they're all saved up on the Athletics Hub, which you can search through for Steeplechase. There's also 2 interviews from myself a few weeks ago and Stu Stokes, talking through the training and transition a bit more of the actual event. And then a few of those articles I've quoted in there are at those links, including a very cool short video by Emma Coburn that she made for ESPN. If anyone wants to inspire their group to do the steeplechase, as it's proven, we aren't in an African-dominated steeplechase anymore. We've had French athletes, American athletes, Tunisian athletes, first ever medal ever at an Olympics, and winning medals. So yeah, I think these kind of technique points are where we can make inroads on the aerobically dominant Kenyans. But yeah, I've been told we've got 5 minutes left, and I definitely don't want to interrupt Mark Rowland. So has anybody got any more questions? I'll happily take any more for 5 minutes. I think there's one coming through. Yeah. Ethiopians and Kenyans are dominant. What is the reason? There's a number of reasons. Altitude's obviously a bit of a proven benefit for endurance athletes. I think these two nations in particular are strong because they are so strong at all the other events. They've just got sheer numbers. It's an absolute way to to some fortune and escapism for many of them. Yeah, if it's tough to make the 1500 meter team and very tough to make the 5K team, you tend to find the steeplechase swell in popularity, and I think that's what's happening in America on the men's and the women's side. They're starting to get a base of athletes that are trying the event. The Japanese are the other nation with huge numbers running, and they are also, as at the World Student Games last year, and one of the favourites was a Japanese athlete for similar reasons, I would imagine, but they're a bit more longer distance athletes. But yeah, if athletes have a chance as kids even to have some success at flat events, it sometimes deters people from steeplechase. Yeah, good point, Vash. Well, I quickly learned that being able to do it well doesn't mean you can necessarily coach it well. So I think it was really good exercise for me to take athletes that really struggled with it. I was fortunate the first time I did it. I got probably 90% of the way there. And actually, you see that with a lot of athletes that just innately get it. So I had to really break it down and work out what was good. So I've had to find just for myself little cues. But yeah, I went back to my S&C and my physio knowledge to break down the action. I learned from hurdlers and actually, even watched high jumpers and how they broke down that action to look at the cues they were giving. So yeah, that our athletes do it. I used to start hurdle training around February, March time because I was pretty good at it, and I just used to basically brush up on it. With the group I coach now, we start doing some hurdles as early as November in the winter, just so that we've got longer to work on those nuances. We don't do hurdling straight away, it's, drills and skills, but we start loading them, coming down from the step early so that it's not a sudden shock in February or March. So yeah, there's a few different ones. Who've been my ideal for the event? Oh God, so many. Yeah, on the guys' side, I mean, Inga Britsons are, very exciting, but I mean, I still think Evan Yeager's one of the best steeplechasers I've ever seen do it. I think from a British point of view, I would love to see, one of the 1500 meter lads, somebody like, Chris O'Hare, try it. He's compact, powerful, really competent in the gym. I've seen him skill and drill, be really good on the girls' side. I don't know. I'd love to see, if the girls are really good at 15 and 5K, then they tend to be really good at steeplechase. I know Laura Waitman is, more than competent. We've seen her move really well. But yeah, I mean, imagine what Laura Muir could do. Yeah, it's scary. But yeah, loads could do it.
Hi, Luke. Hi. Just to come back on quickly and stop you in your prime. It's been such a great webinar tonight. So thanks on behalf of everybody who's tuned in. From me and everyone for such a great presentation. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As always, this will be on the Athletics Hub to look back on, so it should be on within the week, and hopefully you'll all switch over to the Mark Rowland's webinar, which starts at 6 o'clock, and hopefully get some more great stuff from him. So thanks, Luke. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.